They laughed when Evelyn Carter walked into the courtroom. Her daughter Lauren and son-in-law Ryan sat there in their designer suits, whispering and smirking like children sharing a secret joke. Ryan elbowed the man beside him, probably mocking the confused old woman who thought she could defend herself. Evelyn tightened her grip on her worn handbag and walked steadily toward the defense table. They saw an aging widow in sensible shoes, but had no idea who they were really dealing with. 6 months earlier, her husband Charles had passed away and left her everything. Every dollar, every property, every share. Lauren had expected to inherit millions. Instead, the will gave her nothing. Charles had been very clear. His fortune belonged solely to his wife. Lauren refused to believe it. "Mom must have manipulated Dad," she told anyone who would listen. "There's no way he'd leave me out." Soon after, a lawsuit arrived, claiming Evelyn was mentally unfit and had forged the will. The woman who once packed her daughter's lunches was now accused of being a calculating thief. Evelyn sat in her kitchen that morning, the lawsuit papers spread across the table beside her coffee cup. The words blurred together: fraud, manipulation, elder abuse. Lauren's lawyers painted her as a greedy widow who'd taken advantage of a dying man. Evelyn almost laughed at the irony. Her daughter, the woman she'd raised, was now trying to destroy her reputation. "So this is what love looks like," she whispered, staring at the signature at the bottom. Lauren Brooks versus Evelyn Carter. Lauren had always seen her mother as just Mom, the woman who cooked, cleaned, and smiled through every family dinner. She never asked about Evelyn's life before marriage. Never wondered why there were law books in the study or why judges sent Christmas cards each year. During the deposition, Lauren's lawyer, James Parker, had looked at Evelyn condescendingly. "Mrs. Carter," he said slowly, "how did a woman with no business experience gain such detailed knowledge of her husband's finances?" Evelyn smiled politely. "I've always been good with numbers," she replied. Now, sitting in court, Evelyn almost pitied them. Lauren looked confident, sure of her victory. Ryan whispered eagerly to their attorney. They had no idea that Evelyn had been reading legal briefs since before Lauren was born. When the bailiff called the room to order, Judge Caroline Monroe entered. The moment she saw Evelyn, her steps faltered slightly. Their eyes met, a flicker of recognition passing between them, but neither said a word. Lauren didn't notice. She was too busy whispering about their slam dunk case. Evelyn watched them calmly. They thought they'd already won. But they had no idea the story began long before this courtroom battle. It started the day Charles died. Evelyn had been holding his hand as he took his final breath, just as she had for 35 years of marriage. "They'll come for you," Charles had whispered weakly. "But I've made sure you're protected. Everything is yours, just like we discussed." 2 weeks later, the family gathered in Charles's lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Lauren arrived dressed in black, pretending to be heartbroken, tissues in hand. Ryan stood beside her, eyes gleaming with expectation. "To my beloved wife Evelyn Carter," the lawyer read, "I leave my entire estate, valued at approximately $62 million. The room fell silent. Lauren's tissue box dropped to the floor. "That can't be right," she gasped. "Dad promised me the house in Cape May. He said I'd inherit the company." "The will is quite clear," the lawyer continued. "To your daughter Lauren Brooks, you leave a family photograph and your father's watch. To her husband Ryan Brooks, you leave your golf clubs." Evelyn watched her daughter's face twist from grief to rage. "Mom doesn't know the first thing about business," Lauren snapped. "She'll lose everything in a year." Ryan added, "We'll need to review those documents. There must be a mistake." But there wasn't. Charles had planned it meticulously. He had updated his will every time Lauren betrayed their trust, like the $20,000 she'd borrowed for her kitchen renovation and never repaid, or the night she'd mocked Evelyn's cooking at Ryan's promotion dinner, calling it peasant food. Charles had seen it all. He'd watched his daughter treat her mother with disrespect, and he'd decided to protect the woman who had stood by him for decades. After the will reading, Lauren and Ryan followed Evelyn home, pretending to be caring. "Mom, be reasonable," Lauren said, her voice sugary sweet. "You can't handle all that money alone. Let Ryan manage it for you. He's good with finances." Ryan nodded quickly. "We can set up a trust. You'll never have to worry about anything again." Evelyn smiled faintly as she poured tea. "I appreciate the concern," she said. "But I'm perfectly capable of managing my affairs." Lauren's tone sharpened. "Are you though? You've never even balanced a checkbook." Evelyn looked at her daughter silently, realizing this wasn't concern. It was greed disguised as care. That evening, Evelyn sat alone by the fireplace, staring at the flicker of the flames. Her daughter's words replayed in her mind. "You've never even balanced a checkbook." She smiled bitterly. If only Lauren knew how many accounts she had once audited, how many balance sheets she had signed off before she'd given it all up for family. The next morning, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. A courier handed her a thick envelope. Inside were the legal papers officially declaring the lawsuit. Her own daughter was asking the court to deem her mentally incompetent. Evelyn read the petition carefully. According to Lauren's lawyer, she was suffering from cognitive decline, easily confused, and incapable of handling large sums of money. They claimed she'd been manipulated into signing a fraudulent will. Evelyn almost admired their creativity. They had even included evidence, receipts from when she'd once gotten lost driving to Lauren's house due to road construction. Another note mentioned her asking her granddaughter for help setting up Netflix. "So, forgetfulness and technology now define sanity," Evelyn muttered. Her phone rang just as she finished reading. It was Lauren. "Mom, please don't be upset," Lauren began, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "We just want to protect you." Evelyn kept her tone calm. "Protect me from what?" "From making mistakes," Lauren said. "Once the court declares you incompetent, Ryan and I can manage everything. You'll have a monthly allowance and no stress." Evelyn's voice stayed level. "And where exactly would I live in this arrangement?" Lauren hesitated. "The Cape May house would be perfect. It's smaller. We'd take the main house. It's too big for you anyway." Evelyn stared out the window as a cardinal landed on the bird feeder. Charles had always said cardinals brought good luck. "Lauren," she said softly, "do you really believe I'm mentally unfit?" "Mom, it's not about belief," Lauren replied sharply. "It's reality. You were a housewife your whole life. You don't understand business or law. This is for your own good." Evelyn smiled faintly. "You've hired James Parker to represent you. How did you know that?" Lauren snapped. "See, this is exactly what I mean. Your paranoia is getting worse after the call." Evelyn went to Charles's old study. She sat in his leather chair. Surrounded by the scent of old books and faint traces of his cologne. On the desk was a framed photo from their wedding, Charles looking at her like she held the world. She opened the drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope Charles had given her 2 years before. "When they come for you," he'd said, "open this." Inside was a business card and a note in his handwriting. "Evelyn, call Judge Caroline Monroe. She remembers you." Evelyn frowned. The name was familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. The next day, Evelyn decided to visit her daughter. Maybe, she thought, there was still a chance to reason with her before the courtroom war began. Lauren's home was everything Evelyn's wasn't. Modern, sleek, and cold. New furniture, expensive art. Not a trace of warmth. Lauren greeted her at the door, feigning surprise. "Mom." "What a surprise. Ryan's not home." "Good," Evelyn said calmly. "We need to talk." They sat in the spotless living room. Lauren poured coffee but didn't sit close. "There's nothing to discuss," Lauren said firmly. "You're not well, and this lawsuit is for your protection." "I'm not sick, sweetheart," Evelyn replied gently. "I'm grieving, yes, but not incapable." Lauren sighed as though speaking to a stubborn child. "Mom, last week you called me asking how to pay bills online. That's not normal." Evelyn studied her daughter's face. Charles's sharp jaw, her own green eyes. "Lauren," she said quietly, "what if I told you I've been pretending?" Lauren frowned. "Pretending what?" "Pretending to be helpless. Pretending to forget." Lauren's eyes widened. "Why would you do that?" Evelyn leaned back. "Because people show their true selves when they think you're weak." Lauren laughed nervously. "You. A threat. You're 65, Mom. You haven't worked in decades." Evelyn stood, smoothing her skirt. "Then consider this your first warning. You and Ryan have made a serious mistake." "Mom, you're scaring me now," Lauren said, her tone shifting from annoyance to worry. "This paranoia proves why we filed the petition." Evelyn smiled sadly. "I love you, Lauren. I always will. But I won't let anyone, family or not, steal what your father built." She left before Lauren could respond, her heart pounding with both sorrow and resolve. That evening, Evelyn dialed the number on the card. "Judge Monroe's chambers," a voice answered. "This is Evelyn Carter," she said. "I'd like to speak with Caroline about a case." There was a pause. "Evelyn Carter. As in Evelyn Mitchell Carter?" "Yes," she replied. A longer pause followed, then a warm, shocked voice said, "Evelyn? My God, it's really you." Caroline Monroe had once been Caroline O'Brien, Evelyn's law school classmate at Harvard. Memories flooded back, late-night study sessions, debates, and the thrill of the courtroom. "Your daughter's suing you?" Caroline asked incredulously when they finally spoke. "You used to be the sharpest attorney in our class." Evelyn chuckled softly. "She doesn't know that part of my life existed. To her I'm just Mom, the housewife." "Evelyn Mitchell Carter," Caroline said, laughing. "They used to call you the Hammer for a reason. You tore through expert witnesses like paper." Evelyn smiled at the memory. "Those days are long gone, Caroline." "Maybe," the judge said. "But your instincts clearly aren't. Tell me, are you planning to represent yourself?" Evelyn looked at Charles's photo. "Yes, I think it's time my daughter learned who I really am." Caroline was silent for a long time. "Evelyn, law has changed. It's been decades since you've practiced." Evelyn nodded. "I kept my license active, Caroline. I followed every major legal update. I still read case law for pleasure." Caroline exhaled slowly. "Your daughter's attorney, James Parker, is good. He specializes in elder law and asset control cases. He's ruthless." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Then he'll find out what happens when he underestimates a woman who knows the law better than he does." Caroline chuckled softly. "You're walking into a fight, Evelyn. Are you ready for that?" Evelyn looked at the photo of Charles again. "I've been ready my whole life." That night, Evelyn sat at her desk surrounded by the familiar comfort of her old law books. She pulled out her yellow legal pad and began drafting notes. Case references, key arguments, and procedural traps. The habits came back effortlessly. Her handwriting flowed with the same precision it once had in court. She reviewed the petition line by line, noting every inconsistency. James Parker had made a critical mistake. He'd alleged manipulation without naming who the manipulator was. Evelyn smiled. That gap alone could destroy his case. The morning of the first hearing, Evelyn dressed deliberately. She chose a simple navy dress and low heels, the same ones she used to wear to Charles's company dinners. She tied her hair neatly and carried her old leather handbag. No fancy folders, no assistant, no show of power. Let them think she was fragile. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, sensing a scandal between mother and daughter. Lauren and Ryan arrived looking confident, hand in hand. They didn't even glance at Evelyn as they walked past. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs. Evelyn took her seat at the defendant's table, alone. No lawyer beside her, no family support. Just an old woman with calm eyes. When Judge Monroe entered, the room fell silent. "This is the matter of Brooks versus Carter," the bailiff announced. James Parker rose smoothly. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of financial elder abuse and potential fraud," he began. "The defendant, Mrs. Carter, was left a multimillion-dollar inheritance under suspicious circumstances. Evelyn listened patiently as Parker spoke for nearly 20 minutes, weaving a story of a confused widow manipulated by unseen influences. "Your Honor," he said dramatically, "we request an immediate competency evaluation and temporary conservatorship." When he finished, Judge Monroe turned to Evelyn. "Mrs. Carter, you are representing yourself?" Evelyn stood slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. I couldn't afford an attorney." Lauren smirked from her seat, whispering something to Ryan. "Do you understand the nature of these proceedings?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Evelyn replied calmly. "My daughter believes I'm not capable of managing money." James Parker objected sharply. "Your Honor, that oversimplifies the matter." "Sustained," Judge Monroe said. "Mrs. Carter, do you wish to contest these allegations?" Evelyn looked directly at Lauren. "Yes, Your Honor, I do." Caroline, Judge Monroe, studied her old classmate's steady posture. "Very well. Mr. Parker, you're alleging that Mrs. Carter forged her late husband's will. Do you have any evidence?" "We believe it will emerge during the evaluation," Parker said. Evelyn lifted her hand. "May I ask a question, Your Honor?" "Proceed," said the judge. Evelyn turned to Parker. "You claim I forged my husband's will. Are you suggesting the 3 witnesses and the notary were also manipulated?" The attorney's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Carter lacks the legal understanding to grasp the complexity of—" "Actually," Evelyn interrupted softly, "I understand perfectly. You're hoping to have me declared incompetent based on age and gender, not evidence." The courtroom went silent. Lauren blinked rapidly, suddenly unsure. "Mr. Parker," Evelyn continued, "Massachusetts law requires clear and convincing evidence of incapacity. You have none, only opinions." "Objection!" Parker shouted. "Mrs. Carter is clearly being coached." Judge Monroe raised an eyebrow. "By whom, Mr. Parker?" "She's representing herself." The judge's tone carried an edge of amusement. Evelyn stood straighter. "Your Honor, I'd like to present my credentials to the court." The courtroom froze as she reached into her handbag and pulled out her Massachusetts Bar Association card. "Dorothy, excuse me, Evelyn Mitchell Carter, licensed attorney since 1982. The gasps echoed around the room. Lauren's mouth fell open. Ryan's face turned pale. Judge Monroe examined the card carefully. "Mrs. Carter, why didn't you mention your legal background earlier?" Evelyn smiled. "Because I wanted to see exactly what accusations would be made against a woman presumed ignorant." He turned to Parker. "You've spent half an hour arguing I can't understand my finances. Yet you never bothered to check my background." Parker stammered. "This doesn't change anything. She hasn't practiced in decades." Evelyn replied coolly. "Law doesn't fade, Mr. Parker. Only memory. And mine happens to be quite sharp." Lauren finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Mom, you were a lawyer." Evelyn looked at her, eyes soft but steady. "You never asked, Lauren. For 30 years, you never wondered who I was before I became your mother." Ryan whispered furiously to Parker, but the attorney's confidence was gone. Judge Monroe leaned forward. "Mr. Parker, do you have any medical evidence supporting claims of incapacity?" "We request an evaluation," he muttered. "On what grounds?" the judge pressed. Parker hesitated, flipping papers. "Behavioral observations." Evelyn smiled faintly. "If asking for Netflix help is proof of dementia, then I suppose the entire country is unfit." The courtroom broke into quiet chuckles at Evelyn's remark, but Judge Monroe quickly restored order. "Mr. Parker, without medical or psychological evidence, this case has no foundation." Evelyn clasped her hands calmly. "Your Honor, my daughter mistook patience for weakness. I wanted to see how far she would go if she believed I was helpless." Judge Monroe tilted her head. "And what did you discover, Mrs. Carter?" Evelyn turned toward Lauren, her gaze steady but sad. "That my daughter sees me as an obstacle, not a mother. She wants control, not care. Lauren's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Parker shuffled his papers nervously, realizing his case was collapsing. During recess, Evelyn watched through the glass doors as Lauren, Ryan, and Parker argued in the hallway. Ryan's face was red with anger, his gestures sharp. Lauren kept glancing toward the courtroom, her expression torn between guilt and confusion. Evelyn sipped her water quietly, thinking about Charles's words. "They'll come for you." She hadn't realized how right he'd been. When Parker approached her afterward, his tone had softened. "Mrs. Carter, perhaps we can resolve this privately," he suggested. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Privately? After your clients publicly accused me of fraud and dementia?" Parker sighed. "Your daughter is willing to withdraw the petition in exchange for a more equitable division of the estate." Evelyn nearly laughed. "You mean she still wants her inheritance?" "Mrs. Carter," Parker said, lowering his voice, $62 million is a lot for one person to manage." Evelyn smiled politely. "Are you questioning my competence again, Mr. Parker?" "Of course not," he said quickly. "We're just seeking a compromise." Evelyn gathered her handbag. "There will be no compromise." They wanted a courtroom. Now they'll have one. She turned away, leaving him speechless. When court resumed, Parker requested a continuance, claiming he needed more time to gather evidence. Judge Monroe shook her head. "Mr. Parker, you filed this case as an emergency, claiming Mrs. Carter's condition required immediate intervention. You can't delay now." Lauren's shoulders sagged. Her attorney had run out of tricks. Then Parker called her to the stand. "Mrs. Brooks," he began, "please describe your mother's behavior after your father's passing." Lauren hesitated. She seemed confused about finances. She asked questions. "Did those questions concern you?" "At first," Lauren admitted softly. "But now, I don't know." "Why the change of heart?" Parker pressed. Lauren glanced toward her mother. "Because I think she was testing me." The courtroom buzzed. "Do you still believe your mother is unfit to manage her affairs?" Lauren's voice cracked. "I don't know anymore." Evelyn's heart ached, but she kept her expression neutral. Parker quickly ended the questioning, realizing his witness had just destroyed his argument. As the gavel struck for adjournment, Lauren avoided her mother's eyes. That evening, Evelyn's phone rang. It was Lauren, her voice trembling. "Mom, can we talk?" Evelyn hesitated, then answered gently. "I'm listening." Lauren's tone softened. "Why didn't you ever tell me you were a lawyer? Why did you hide that?" Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "Because when you were born, I wanted to be your mother, not your attorney. I chose to be present for you, not for courtrooms." There was silence, then Lauren whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought Ryan was right. He said you'd lose everything Dad worked for. I didn't want to see that happen." Evelyn sighed. "You wanted to believe that because it was easier than facing the truth." Lauren sniffled. "Why didn't Dad leave me anything? Did I disappoint him that much?" Evelyn's heart broke hearing her daughter's pain. "Your father loved you deeply, Lauren. But he also saw how you and Ryan treated money. You borrowed and never repaid. You mocked others for having less. He didn't want to enable that." Lauren's voice wavered. "So he punished me?" "No," Evelyn said softly. "He trusted me to teach you the lesson he couldn't. That love isn't measured in inheritance, and respect isn't optional." "Can we fix this?" Lauren asked quietly. "Can we start over?" "Maybe someday," Evelyn replied. "But not yet. Tomorrow Ryan will convince you to keep fighting. He'll twist this to make it seem like I manipulated everything." Lauren was silent. "How do you know that?" she finally asked. "Because I've watched him for years," Evelyn said. "Ryan sees dollar signs, not family." Lauren cried softly. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart," Evelyn said gently. "But love without honesty is hollow. We can't rebuild until that changes." After hanging up, Evelyn sat in the dim light, wondering if she had been too harsh, or finally strong enough. The next morning brought a surprise. Lauren arrived at court alone, her face pale but determined. 20 minutes later, Ryan entered with a new lawyer, a brash young man named David Chen. He requested a private meeting with Judge Monroe. When they returned, Chen smirked confidently. "Your Honor, we're amending our petition," he declared. "We now allege that Mrs. Carter deliberately deceived her family into filing this lawsuit, proving she's manipulative and unfit." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "So now I'm too clever to be competent?" The judge hid a smile. "Mr. Chen, you can't argue she's both unstable and brilliant." Chen stumbled. "Her actions show psychological instability." Evelyn stood gracefully. "Your Honor, defending oneself isn't instability, it's clarity." They mistook caution for deceit.